I'm Mark Kermode and I listen to the Movie Bunker podcast.
Hi, it's Chris here from the Movie Bunker podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by art teacher, film writer and podcaster Simon Columb. After the interview, Matthew delivers his final pitch. It's a good one. Enjoy the interview and catch you on the other side. Hey, it's Chris from the Movie Bunker podcast, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Columb. Welcome to the Bunker, Simon.
Hello. Glad to be here. This is great.
So you've been cajoled into joining in the Bunker chat about these films that are critically panned. What got you into movies in the first place? Your background is a bit of journalism, podcasting. So where did it all begin?
I started blogging 10 years ago, which was fine. And then I got involved in the LAM, the Large Association of Movie Blogs, which was this kind of ramshackle group of bloggers from across the movie writing thing. This is all before Twitter. I think you've got a lot of people who they blogged because they wanted to kind of share their thoughts. But now you have Twitter, you can kind of share your thoughts just instantaneously in a, whatever small character amount of letters, you just send it off. But back then it was everybody had a blog. And so that's what I did. And then I thought, okay, I want to do more of this. And so I tried to I dipped my toe in the idea of, pitching to film people or magazines as well. I managed to get one article or one very small sidebar even into Empire, which is my kind of big thing, which I kind of am very proud of. But, and I sometimes pitch, but I never pitch it enough, to be perfectly honest. The thing is that by day, I'm an art teacher and I love that part of my life as well. So I'm always kind of torn between whether I'm going to be getting involved with art and art teaching and art education and the kind of educational side of my passion, which is like every day in my day job ultimately, or do I make time to watch movies, read reviews, analyze that type of text, and then try and write and trying to be even close to that kind of writing. So I feel quite lucky that I've got this kind of personal passion simultaneously with the kind of job that I really enjoy. But it means ultimately that with regards to the film writing, I've never really jumped into it feet first. If I get rejected from one pitch, then I probably won't pitch anybody for like 6 months or a year or something, because I'm just like, I'm rubbish. Then I just leave it. And it's much more secure writing for like Culture Fly, which I do film reviews for, which is, just a bit of fun with a very small kind of thing. Lately I did a first review for Hey You Guys, which is nice. I used to write for Flicker and Myth, and but all of these were just I knew the people who I'm writing for, and they knew me, so it was a much more comfortable kind of process as opposed to the rejection associated with.
You're kind of scratching that itch with Culture Fly, aren't you? That you've got with all this the sort of multimedia-ness about that podcast, and how you're regularly visiting art exhibitions, that deals with that side of your passion, and then you've got movie reviews, as you say, and there's other sort of installations and things that you discuss on that podcast. And then the other podcast that I listened to recently, which was the Marvel Rewatch, which is another, I guess, a massive undertaking on your behalf and the co-hosts that you had on the show. I guess not another Marvel podcast in the way that you would expect, because you delved a lot deeper in terms of soundtracks, with obviously Amon's passion for soundtracks, and your other co-host, which I forget her name, which was looking at the costumes and all the kind of all that sort of set dressing and things. I mean, how did that happen? I mean, how did that decision come to sort of immerse yourself in the Marvel universe again?
I think when Infinity War came out, I felt like I missed an opportunity to rewatch all the films, and then I thought, actually, with Endgame, that's the real end. They did that very clever thing, didn't they, where they were like, Infinity War, it all ends here. And then we all went to see that, and they were like, Endgame, it really ends here. And then we're all like, okay. And we were all trying to rewatch it again. But I didn't rewatch them before Infinity War. And I thought, I'd never really got into the TV series. So I'd only watched a couple of episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that kind of thing. So I thought, this will be my way to watch all the TV series, all the films, and really immerse myself in this in the run-up to Endgame. And I started Agent Carter, and I kind of tweeted about it, and Sabina then got in touch and said, you should do a podcast. Sabina, as I'm sure you know, is obsessed with Agent Carter. So that was like great. And then of course, Amon I knew from seeing around in London and knowing personally, and he just knows everything about comics. You know, his kind of knowledge on that was just, second to none. So I kind of reached out to him, and he was well up for it as well. And because it was only like a 20 episode arc, we could just say, right, we know that for this period between it was January and April, we just kind of just went for it. And it was great fun. Really, really great fun.
Yeah, it's a crack and listen. I did a binge on it, I think, before Captain Marvel was coming out, and then I kind of got up to date for that so that I could hear that review coming, and then you still kind of delved into other films that were still in your kind of trajectory, and then Endgame came out. Yeah, it's a cracking listen, and I recommend it to anybody who wants to sort of carry on the nostalgia that is because for me, I'm not entirely sure where those movies are going, and I know hopefully they're going in a good direction and that the quality won't dip at all. But there's always that thing in the back of your mind where have we seen the best that they can offer, and are things now going to be sort of a little bit too different and a different audience potentially? I don't know, but I'm hopeful that it will carry on.
There's definitely this kind of uncharted territory element on the nature of universes because they're so big.
Yeah.
I mean, to watch, there's already a sense of like the Netflix Marvel series seem to be non-canon to some extent, though I heard rumors that Charlie Cox might reprise his role as Daredevil in some guys. But, I'm kind of we're going to get to a point where at the very least, up until Endgame, you could watch everything quite, manageably to some extent. Whereas now it's going to keep getting bigger. These TV series with Disney Plus are going to be bigger, and they're going to be more commonplace. And I just wonder how, if you're a kid now, granted, I've got all these films to watch prior, but it's just so much. Whereas, I don't know about you, but when the new James Bond came out, you could watch the new James Bond, and then you could, I'll watch the previous 18 films, and that'd be it. But there's already over 20 films, 22, I think, now with the Marvel universe. And it's just, it's quite a lot. And I don't know how people will be able to easily access that, but we'll see. There's nothing like it in cinema at the moment. And, that's crazy.
Yeah, in Feige we trust. I think that's kind of the motto we have to have. What movie have you chosen for us in the bunker today?
I've chosen M. Night Shyamalan's, and you've got to have that name at the top of the film title here. M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
We have always had, since the day we settled here, a gentle understanding with the creatures who live beyond our borders. We do not stray into their woods. They do not come into our village. I have always pictured them in some ways as our protectors. They have allowed us to live here, nestled amongst them in this untouched place. By the markings we find this morning on our homes, I feel they were warning us. We may question ourselves at moments such as these. Did we make the right decision to settle here? I fear our days of peace are over. You are fearless in a way that I shall never know.
Right now, in 2019, M. Night Shyamalan is a tricky one. I don't know. I mean, he had that kind of revival of some sort, but I feel like Glass didn't secure everybody's feeling about him. But The Village, for me, is my favorite film of all of his, which I think for some people, that's kind of, they're like, what? They can't believe that. But for me, it's definitely my favorite.
there's so much to delve into with this movie. I guess I wanted to touch on a few things with regards to M. Night Shyamalan and his kind of reputation of being like this fantastic new visionary like director and writer, and then is fall from grace, and whether you kind of believe in that or not. I mean, what are your kind of feelings towards his the quality in his output?
I mean, I think I do think he's a fascinating director in a lot of ways, but of course I think he's definitely a filmmaker who is aspiring to make films that are simultaneously crowd-pleasing, blockbuster kind of things for the most part, but also, and successful ultimately, but also films that try to reach a little bit higher, try to go for something a little bit more profound, something a bit bigger than, just a good scare movie or just a good sci-fi or whatnot. They're always trying to do something more. And I think for me, I'm very much a fan of ambition. If you have a filmmaker who's trying to do something big, take Prometheus, for example. He's trying to do something big, and he might fail a little bit, but actually that ambition, I'd take that any day over a filmmaker who's just trying to have something that has no depth, no meaning, no purpose, just a bit of fun. You know what I mean? That's sometimes I'd rather the ambition, personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think
Shyamalan has that,
he definitely does in spades, and I think it's difficult to criticize, although many people do criticize what he has committed to celluloid, I guess, since being held as this kind of new age of cinema sort of thing with Signs, especially The Sixth Sense even. But I completely agree. As I say, I mean, I've heard, whether or not it's true, that he does self-finance a lot of his projects. He writes, obviously.
He gambled He gambled everything on Split, and even The Visit. When he made The Visit, which was his first film, with Blumhouse.
Yep.
He kind of made that one, and he went to the studios and he made it all himself, and went around Hollywood, said, "Here we go. Is anybody going to take this?" And they're all like, "No." And so he was like, "Oh my God!" But the guy, is it Jason Blum? Is that right? He was the one who said, "Okay, let's do this." And then they did Split, and of course, he had full faith in that whole concept. The idea of doing a sequel that wouldn't cash in on the, if Split was sold as a sequel to Unbreakable, they'd have made double the box office to some extent, and yet they didn't do that. And that's incredible. That's incredibly brave on their part to do that. But I think it's a testament to, I suspect, Jason Blum probably likes his integrity, that he is trying to do something bigger and something that has meaning. And I like I said, I appreciate that too. Well, you had the whole, is he a one-trick pony with the whole twist ending?
Yeah.
And personally, I've always found that such a frustration, because I feel like with Unbreakable, it's not so much a twist, just more a reveal. Like, the film doesn't hinge on the fact that he's Mr. Glass. I mean, granted, it adds a lot of depth, but ultimately, by the time you get to that, David Dunn has found his purpose, and you know what I mean? It almost feels like you're at the end of the film, and then you have that moment where, oh, he's Mr. Glass, and you go, okay, that's impressive too, but it's not quite the same as the entire film changes its meaning in the same way as Sixth Sense, I would argue. Signs, I would argue the same thing. I think it's just a reveal, I guess. I mean, in any sci-fi film, you have to defeat the aliens. You wouldn't turn around and say Independence Day, it's a twist ending when they realize that they have to do a virus. I mean, that just happens to be the way that ends. And then obviously, but I guess The Village is one where it does have a twist. But as we get into it later, I think that's probably the least important part of the film. But it does add a really interesting layer and a really interesting critical commentary.
What did you think of Lady in the Water? No one really talks about it anymore.
There was a book actually about the making of that, which was very critical and very harsh on M. Night Shyamalan. And obviously, ultimately, the film didn't do particularly well. Doesn't help when you have a critic being framed as a moron. I've seen it a couple of times. I haven't seen it for years, and I think, funnily enough, when you had Lady in the Water and The Happening, they were two films which I watched multiple times when they first came out, and probably watched The Happening more than that. And I always come away feeling like I really want to like this film, but I just can't quite do it. It's kind of weird when you think about how much time you'll give to a film or a filmmaker, which you'd never give to anybody else. I'd never watch bloody Transformers Revenge of the Fallen 4 times to work out if I really like it. But I'll do that with The Happening and Lady in the Water and still come away going, doesn't quite work for me. But there's good things in them. I mean, there's points in it which are good. The Lady in the Water soundtrack has been used countless times because it's so impressive, and you just see it everywhere in trailers. But that's an incredible score by James Newton Howard.
The casting then, the casting choices for The Village, it's just gold, isn't it? It's
outstanding.
Bryce Dallas Howard, we obviously back then was probably quite an emerging actor, I guess. And Jackie Phoenix, we know, obviously has gone on to do amazingly great things. And Adrian Brody, William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver, Brendan Gleeson. It goes on. And there's even Jesse Eisenberg in here, which I was thinking, I don't even remember him in this.
Yeah, he doesn't have many lines, but he just happens to be a character in The Village, as it were, just a teenager in there. I mean, it's an outstanding cast. It's just, I think, when you like Joaquin Phoenix, remember he was in Signs, so you had this kind of carry on in the same way you had Bruce Willis in both Unbreakable and Sixth Sense. You had Joaquin Phoenix, who was in both The Village and Signs, and in both films. I mean, he's just outstanding. And what's obviously brilliant about The Village is how it kind of begins as this story where you see Joaquin Phoenix as this kind of central role, Lucius Hunt, and then obviously halfway through, it completely changes and it becomes Bryce Dallas Howard's film. And, we see where that leads. And I just love that switch.
It's really creepy. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about it, is the fact that I'm not a particularly switched on person when it comes to things. I do need things sometimes spelling out. I'm always the last person to catch the twist, the last person to actually put 2 and 2 together and get, oh yeah, it takes me a lot longer. I don't know why. I'm just a very naive guy. Probably a filmmaker's dream. I'm the right audience for everything, because I'll believe everything until actually the last minute. So with the kind of reveal, as you say, the kind of the mystical elements of this movie, I was well on board with, thinking, oh, wow, this is so creepy. And the first visit, if you like, that they get from these creatures in the woods, because I don't think we really need to explain the plot to people, because I think they well and truly will understand this movie and be aware of the kind of plot devices that it has. But when those creatures turn up for the first time with the red hood, with the spikes and the kind of giant hedgehogs, aren't they, sort of hunched over with these red cloaks on, I was bricking it. It was so creepy and scary, and the acting as well, and the kind of chemistry between Joaquin Phoenix and Bryce Dallas Howard's characters was spot on, and you could really tell that they were you believed that they cared for each other, and how that sort of relationship was going to evolve without the issues that sort of turn up later on in the film. But creature wise and effects wise, it's so basic, but it does the trick, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think I've seen that a lot. So like the scary bits with that red cloak and stuff. I mean, I get the tension. I can obviously always buy into that. But of course, when you watch it and you know the end, and you know how these are the people in the village, or Adrian Brody's character, Noah Percy, but when you kind of know, you're more aware of that. So I'm always wrapped in the love between Bryce Dallas Howard and Joaquin Phoenix. It's so pure and so innocent. I can't help, like that moment when she's holding her hand out, which I think the first time I saw the film, and bear in mind, it's worth reminding ourselves, Roger Deakins' cinematography is just out of this world. I mean, it just looks stunning. But that moment when she's holding her hand out, I mean, when I'm watching it, when I first watch it, you're obviously scared, these creatures they're gonna get him. But when I watch it now, I'm just waiting for Lucius Hunt, that was it, Joaquin Phoenix's character, just take that hand, and that swell of music, and that moment reveals so much about how he protects her and how he loves her, and how the horror, while almost the kind of disguise of this film in terms of publicity, in terms of what we're brought into, the romance in this film is just, for me, what I come back to time and time again. And those two characters and their love, it just gets me every time. It really does make me well up and gives me goosebumps when I'm watching it. And for a film that is generally considered, it's stupid plot and all that kind of stuff, which people can be so dismissive, I really get wrapped up in that kind of honesty, that beauty of that kind of love, young love, you know?
Yeah. And I think you're spot on in terms of the feels of this movie, to put it in a really basic way, because William Hurt's character, Sigourney, well, all the parents who make the decision to isolate themselves and to bring up their children and live in a pure environment, as a parent and someone who's, you know, in their 40s now and looking back at my life and looking forward at my children's lives, it just seems like the most idyllic and most normal thing to do.
That's how it frames it. It frames it like that. When you actually think about it for a few seconds, they're awful people. That they've isolated their children. They've forced and restrained their perspective on the world. They've got no experience of all of the diversity of culture in the world and all that kind of stuff, because that's their only experience. They've let children die because of their belief in what they believe is right. I think, especially in the current climate, I think you can't help but find that kind of, it's fascinating to see this film told from the perspective of them in the village and the beauty of this isolation, and then actually realize how damaging this has been. I mean, Brendan Gleeson's character, it's just a small role, but the fact that it begins with him burying his child, and that we realize that that's something that could have been stopped, could have been different.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. I just kind of was thinking about this kind of idyllic.
But you're supposed to see it like that. You're supposed to think how beautiful it is, and it is beautiful. And obviously that's the way it's shot and the way it looks. And I think you do buy into that. But of course, it makes it so much more complicated when Bryce Dallas Howard, Ivy Walker, finds out about the truth, and then ultimately when she comes back and you see them gathered around and saying to each other, "Is this what we want to continue doing?" And obviously just leaves that lingering in the air, because that's got all sorts of complicated issues with it. I mean, the moment you see Adrian Brody's parents, when they kind of come back and somebody says, like, runs in and goes, you know, Ivy Walker, she saw a creature, but they killed him, but she killed him, you know? And then you see his parents just break down because they know that's his son, that's their son who's dying. I mean, I'm literally getting goosebumps as I'm talking to you about this. It's just heartbreaking. They've invested in this because of such hurt in their own lives, and yet this has now got to this point where they have to make this decision. And you know, I don't know. I mean, it's complicated, but I love it. I really love it. I always think about when I saw Shutter Island. I won't give anything away to it, but I remember the whole time thinking what would happen at the end would happen. And so the whole time I'm watching it, I was thinking, I'll bet this is the case. And then it's revealed that it is the case. And so, you know, I mean, that's a perfect example of, I saw this twist coming. But I think a great film is kind of like, it shouldn't kind of matter. Like, obviously, they're going to be laying breadcrumbs to hint at this. And when again with The Village, there's points in it where obviously the families have under the stairs and all these different reasons why it clearly is set in a contemporary period. But I think it's more a question as to why, which is interesting. Why have they done this? And I think therefore that twist, and it was the same with Shutter Island, because ultimately what happened at the end, you're just thinking, you want to know if that's the case or not, fine, and that's a twist. But actually, I'm more interested and I'm more engaged by the question and the answer to why is this happening? Why did they do that? Why did they go and create this village? And when you find out that they've all gone through these horrific experiences independently and collectively decided to say, do you know what? I'm sick of the world. I'm going to create our own little world. Again, heartbreaking but fascinating, and a really interesting kind of dilemma, because people do that. People do isolate themselves from the things around them. People say, you know, I'm just going to not vote. It's just nothing to do with me, or I'm just going to not do this. I'm just going to, you know, why do I need to worry about anybody else? And they just isolate themselves away from things. So there's that microcosm example, but I think it's relevant. Do you embrace the world with all its flaws, or do you isolate yourself away? And that's an interesting conflict.
Oh dear, what a road, what a rocky road. I feel depressed.
But, who knew M. Night Shyamalan would do this?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But
yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating watching something like, when you watch his first 4 films, nothing seems out of place. There's a certain type of language and how they speak. And I think in The Village in particular, there's a very weird way that they speak. And the actors kind of have to be able to deliver that, And I think like Mel Gibson, who's obviously at the center of Signs, he manages to deliver it particularly well. And obviously Bruce Willis in the first 2 as well. But when you watch something like The Happening, I feel like the problem there isn't so much the story, but I think it's Mark Wahlberg's delivery. I just don't think he delivers it very well. But there's nothing different, I think. You can very clearly hear the same writer behind The Happening. I think it's why I like revisiting that one, because there's so many interesting scenes and there's so many interesting moments, and there's but it ultimately doesn't hang together. But I think it's because of the delivery of the language. But in terms of The Village, the language is just so unusual, and again, you have to kind of run with that. And I think that's something which I think some people are just like, you know what, I'm out. I don't want to. This is weird. Well, not me, of course.
No, me neither. I think I've always had a belief that his next movie is going to be, back on, or not for me, but for maybe the wider audience to say, I really want him to do really well again, because I admire him for what he does and in the way he approaches cinema making. He's different to a lot of other directors and filmmakers out there. But I'm interested to see what he does next. And I know he's connected to some sort of horror film or maybe a TV series again. But what do you think the future is for him? I mean, I know it's difficult to say, but what would you like him to do if you could have a word with him?
Well, I think it's funny, isn't it? Because now we're in a period where he's delivered on the sequel, which we all wanted from Unbreakable. Because that was always the thing which people had, were waiting for. Do you know, I'm not a big horror film fan, funnily enough, because and so Sixth Sense, though I really like the film, of course, I think the horror kind of gory kind of stuff, not that it's particularly gory compared to like Saw or something, but what I mean, there are moments of shock and whatnot. I'm kind of not as interested in that. So when he made The Visit, I watched it and I liked it, but that's very much, a horror film, Yeah. And even Split is very much a horror film. And while I can appreciate it, it's not my bag. I'd be very curious to see what how he'd do with a sci-fi in space or something like that, or to see what he'd do with a kind of more urban setting, which isn't The Happening. Because The Happening, a lot of that was in New York, if I remember rightly. And then they go out actually into the more rural areas later on. But I'd love to see something more city-based, for example, like he's done in Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, when they're more like in the city, because they're always in Philadelphia. A lot of his films are linked to Philadelphia. So I'd love to see something like that. He needs to stay well away from properties like The Last Airbender or any type of franchise family film. I think we've been there. It didn't work. That's okay. Just stand back and do something else. But I'd love to see him try something else, because I think, again, the way he works, the way he sees things, if he can get James Newton Howard back, I think like with Glass, that was the biggest loss, that you didn't get James Newton Howard's themes throughout the film. And I know you have moments where those themes from Unbreakable come through, and they obviously had the rights to them, but I always felt like it was missing that score throughout the film myself. But I'd love to see him tackle just something completely different, but not a horror. Ideally, explicitly not a horror. That would be preferred by me anyway. Those first 4 films, you can't take them away from him. And he's not a one-hit wonder. Those all 4 do all stack up. So it's just trying to get him back onto that there's something there.
Well, let's put our heads together and see if we can come up with some sort of pitch for him. I've got a few up my sleeve, so just see if he'd like to. Do you think he'd entertain that? I don't think he would, to be honest.
Well, see, he did After Earth, didn't he? And that was, I don't remember if he wrote the script or if he didn't, or if it wasn't his story. There was something about it which ultimately wasn't his, that he was kind of a director for hire on After Earth. But
After Earth has come up. He's come up in one of our choices for sci-fi flicks that we occasionally on the podcast we put it out to the audience so I could choose. Okay, next week's genre will be sci-fi, and we pick the worst 4. and that's come up a couple of times. And I'd like to do it. I've seen it a couple of times. I don't think it's that bad either. It's another one of those ones that it's not that bad.
Famously, that was like, you just imagine if you were Will Smith and you just went to M. Night Shyamalan and said, you know what, you're a great director. Every film I make does well, so we should make a film, and your career will be back on track. And then After Earth bombed royally, like the worst film in Will Smith's career in terms of box office. And it was like, what? Like, it's crazy that can happen. But this man.
It's not even that bad. I mean, I know his son's. I mean, maybe it's the son. Maybe it's just too close, and I don't know. With him having his own son in the movie, but that's been done before. But there's bits in that movie that are really good. I was looking forward to it. I enjoyed it. It's like I enjoyed, like you say, so many of his films. The only one I haven't seen, which again is kind of rattling away in the bunker drawer, is the Airbender one. But I just don't think it's kind of one of those films that is that famous for being that bad that it's kind of we kind of don't want to go there. It's kind of like, well, is there anything good in this movie? I'm trying to find the good things out of all these critically panned movies, but I don't think there's anything to celebrate about that one. From what I read and what I see, it's just
Dev Patel is a villain, which is pretty cool. Like that's Dev Patel in like that kind of very unusual role. So there's that interesting, and there is an incredible scene at the end with a wave, as I recall. And my younger brother, who we will talk about M. Night Shyamalan, our love for his films, and he's very much, he's seen it multiple times. He really enjoys it. But I think he's in a minority. I always just remember how people said that there was like points at the start when they'd look at the ground and there was like cracks in the ice, and then the character would like stop and look at each other, and they'd be like, the ice, and they'd look back down, it's cracking, and it was just like, oh my gosh, it's very difficult to like that film. I ultimately can't. I just couldn't get on board. I'd like to, but I haven't even seen it a second time.
One day I shall delve into the box set of M. Night Shyamalan and just watch everything in one row. But until that time, I've got Holmes and Watson to watch or whatever. There's too many bad films out there. What's next for you then, Simon? Is there what's kind of bubbling away that you're really interested in or going to write about next, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's all very much, I'll find something very exciting which I'm engaged in, and then I'll just kind of do it. Like at the moment, there's another podcast I'm guesting on, and I think I'll be talking about Marriage Story. And that gives me the excuse to watch a lot of Noah Baumbach, which is not a problem. Yeah. So that's coming up soon. So yeah.
And in terms of the Culture Fly podcast, you've just done an episode on Terminator and other bits and pieces. That's kind of the only thing I can remember from that podcast, because a lot of it. We've just started a new thing where we're going to talk about like multiple films of the same kind of genre or the same filmmaker, and the next episode is about 4 musicals, and we talk about Singing in the Rain, West Side Story, Sing Street, and Dreamgirls. So that's a lot of fun, and that's coming up very soon. That's going to be one of the Culture Fly episodes coming up. And Sing Street is an amazing movie. I love that film so much. It's brilliant. Oh, look, it's been fantastic you coming on the show and talking about a magnificent film, which is no way going to stay in the bunker. It's being released for the public to enjoy, and so they should. And where can we find rewatch and put it back on the DVD shelves of the masses? What's your Twitter handles and your
I'm on Twitter at Screen Insight, and of course I've got a website, www.simoncolumb.com, COLUMB unusually, but yeah, if you want to check out my writing.
Thanks again, Simon. It's been brilliant talking to you today.
Thanks so much, Chris.
It's pitch time.
It is pitch time. And have we decided this is the final ever pitch, Chris?
Yeah, we're not doing the pitches anymore.
We're not doing the pitches anymore because we've run out of pitch. We haven't run out of pitch. I'm not going to say that out loud. I'm going to say what we've done is all the other pitches inside our head are just too damn valuable.
We think it's time to maybe keep a lot of these ideas to ourselves, because
giving this shit away for free.
Yeah,
free, man.
It's not on. And also, actually, we've realised that it's a pretty boring.
It's tricky. It's very tricky.
It's tricky. So we're going to try something else for the next interview episode. So yeah, stay tuned for those. those updates. I don't know how that's going to work.
I guess it'd be at the end of the film. The next film on we'll announce. We'll announce what the pitch replacement would be. But we know what it is, but we're going to say it then. We're going to leave you on tenterhooks.
I can't wait. But so you're seeing us out because you started this whole pitch malarkey, and now you're finishing it. So
we didn't want to leave our dedicated viewers dangling, because 2 pitches back, when it was my pitch, there was talk of the famous Vegas pitch.
Yes.
Like, do you remember the Vegas pitch? And with this podcast, we will detail exactly what the Vegas pitch was and see whether or not it was worthy to be forgotten by me or worthy to be remembered by you. Who was the most worthy?
Well, it
makes sense.
It does, but let's flesh it a little bit. So there's a pitch that you pitched me in about 2006 or 2007. I can't remember.
Yeah, we were both sat dead fish-eyed outside a shop whilst our respective girlfriends at the time, or were we married? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. We weren't married.
Girlfriends at the time were doing their 6 consecutive hours of shopping. And our jovial, happy-go-lucky spirits had left us by, despite being in Vegas. It was only beer and sugar donuts that was keeping me going. And so we were sat by a fountain and slightly morose. And I sort of looked you in your eye and said, I've got a film, Chris, and I want to pitch it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, you did pretty much say, I've got a film idea. What do you think of it?
In between mouthfuls of donut and swigs of lager.
Yeah. So
that's all great films are made.
Cast your mind. Let's just imagine yourselves in that situation. So I'm going to close my eyes because it's the only way to do this.
Yeah, you're into that. I'm going to keep mine open so I don't bump into the microphone. Okay, so the pitch was, so the high line of the pitch and how I opened it up to you was Ocean's 11 in hell. So again, there's a theme in these podcasts. I also tend to be sort of on the occult side of things, zombie style. But so in my mind, it was a comedic caper. I love a good caper film. The Ocean's 11 films, love them. Welcome to Collingwood. It's a great film. If you've never seen that film, watch that film. It's kind of the complete opposite of all the glitz and glamour of Ocean's 11, but with the same kind of vibe to it. It's just, I like the double takey things, the original Italian Job, the other Italian Job, which would have been a good film had they not used the words Italian Job in the title, because it had nothing to fucking do with that film.
Yeah, Mr. Bean, the movie, that's quite a caper.
Mr. Bean is a good one, especially when he's flicking the V's in the cars he's driving off. So I love a caper film, a crime caper film, and this is my take on this was that. So what happens in the plot is there's an everyman. There's always an everyman. He's our favourite character in England. We love an everyman, or an every woman. It could be, actually, I suppose, doesn't make a difference. And he's getting around his drudgery job-wise, and then one morning he's woken up with an eclectic cast of characters sat around his bed, and they can be all sorts. I'm imagining a kind of dwarven, smelly man, a very glamorous male kind of peacock kind of character, all sorts of, about five kind of strange and fantastical people. And obviously he's thrown by this fact that they're in his room in the morning. They then take to convincing him that he's actually a descendant of Lucifer and is required for their heist into hell. So the premise is that there's a thing in the Bible about a rich man has got as much chance of getting into heaven as a camel going through the eye of a needle. Probably not in the Bible, that, because he didn't have needles, I'm guessing. But the thought is that if people in heaven don't need or don't take their money with them, then in hell you have your money down there, but you can't touch it. It's useless. It's pointless. So there's huge piles of cash in hell just knocking about, and the eclectic group want to go and steal that, but to get in, to go through the first initial gate and to subsequent other portions of the journey, they need someone of the blood of Lucifer, of the original demon itself so that they can get through. So this is why they're here. The usual comedy kind of, no, it's not me, blah, blah, blah. Then in Tails, they finally convince the protagonist to join their merry little band, and then they take on a caper into hell.
So these characters, are they in leather? Are they dressed in a sort of a leather?
One's in leather.
Yeah.
Another one is in a marvelous tweed.
They don't look like extras from, I don't know, some sort of The Matrix or something. They look.
God, no. Something a lot more sort of like normal. Maybe sort of time cast. So, you got like a Victorian lady, maybe a soldier gent.
Yeah,
at a certain time, that kind of thing. Something very visual and eclectic. And
yeah, and can I just ask you another question? Do they all have like special powers?
They all bring something to the party. I think that's an important part of all of these caper movies. You always have the explosive person that's either replaced or augmented by a hacker person. You always have someone that can open a door. You always have someone that can take out a guard or two. So yeah, you're going to need similar skill sets.
I'm thinking of, as soon as you said band of men and women, I was thinking of the characters from Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Yeah, there's no uni there though.
But a little bit older, yeah. But they could be.
Well, you could have uni. You could have a uni there, just really foul-mouthed.
Yeah.
So
like by Ryan Reynolds.
Maybe this is how they first appeared to him. They appeared to him as something from his youth to try and make it, gentle to him. To try, right? So let's go. He's watched this cartoon as a kid. We're gonna go, and then uni's the really foul-mouthed one. Fuck you, buddy. Kind of thing. Yeah, and the other one of the scenes I always had in mind was as they pass into hell, is that your sins become manifest. And that's part of the sort of like torturous things that is. And because this guy's quite uninteresting and stuff, is that the manifest of his sins was just like 4,000 versions of him masturbating around, which I thought would be quite a humorous sin as he's trying to sort of like shuffle these fervently wanking avatars of himself away before the other people realise that's what his sins are.
Okay, I got it. That's good.
That would have been good, right? That was really good scene.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, so that's the famous Vegas pitch.
Yeah, it's hasn't lost any of its sparkle.
None of its sparkle. Yeah, no, it was a film I would watch. I would watch that.
And we cast the character in it, Simon Pegg, didn't we?
Yeah, I think maybe he's too famous now. I think we could do better than Simon Pegg now.
Yeah, back in those days, I mean, that he wasn't nowhere near as big as he is now.
I tell you, who'd be good now is Ramesh Raghunathan. He does Dry so well.
Yeah, anyone that's really not built for it either. He just looks like completely normal.
Yeah. It's not someone you see in Fast and Furious 8, right?
No sort of action hero. They have to earn their power. It's a bit like Kung Fu Panda,
Yeah. They're basically all versions of Poe. I mean, these are all story points and things that we've seen before. It's just the setting which is kind of slightly astray, and the hilarious jokes which set it apart. So if you could all just right now go and imagine a hilarious joke, that's exactly what it would be like.
Well, I'm up for it, and I think eventually when we just sort of compile all these pictures into a book, which obviously we've got planned, then this will be the final one, the icing on the cake, or the cherry on the cake, even the glory pitch.
The glory pitch. Yes, the glory shot, something that we could really get our teeth into. So there you go. That's the end of the pitch. The pitch is now gone.
And then I guess it will be something else or something different.
It will be something different. Very much like the top fives led into the pitches. The pitch will lead into something else. It's like Doctor Who, but slightly less interesting.
We're going to do a film next, probably, as it's the season. We'll be looking at, or at least having some ideas about some of the worst Christmas films, or the critically panned Christmas films out there, I guess. Trying to find some diamonds in the rough, because that's what we do on the podcast.
None of that Die Hard shit. I mean, come on. Let it go, people. It's not a Christmas film.
Bruce Willis did say so himself.
It's not a Christmas film.
It's set at Christmas, but it's not a Christmas movie.
Like, what other film would you go, oh, that's an August the 25th film? You just wouldn't.
Excuse the pun. Die-hard fans of Die Hard that will watch it on Christmas Day. Or Christmas Eve, or in the Christmas time, because they consider it to be a Christmas movie. But for me,
it's not a Christmas film.
But it's
like in the genre of Christmas films, it's not a Christmas film. It's a film which has bits about Christmas in it. It's not a Christmas film. You don't look at it and get those sort of Christmassy vibes. It's a brilliant film, don't get me wrong, and you can watch it I'm letting you viewers, listeners even, I'm letting you watch this anytime you want to. I'm not being draconian about it. I'm just saying, don't call it a Christmas film because it just isn't.
So until next time, I guess we'll be in touch on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Get involved.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Like and subscribe and leave a comment and a review. Oh, before we go, that reminds me, Matt, before we do anything else, I just got to say, we did get a review and we said if we got another review on iTunes, we would read it out.
Go for it, man. They deserve the payoff.
Great podcast focusing on cinema. Great podcast. I'll just leave it. So, great podcast is the title. By Quayacom, Quaiacom. I don't know who that is. It's not related to me. I certainly don't know who they are. But it goes like this. From legitimate turkeys to unfairly maligned flicks, Matt and Chris take them all on, sorting out those which deserve to be locked in the bunker forever from those that maybe, just maybe, deserve another chance. Great banter, good guests, and some fascinating insights. A must listen for movie fans.
Ah, that's one for the wall.
Yeah, that's one for the flyer that we're going to do eventually. So thanks ever so much. Keep them coming. We'll read them out and give you a shout out.
Well done, that person, even though we can't pronounce their screen name.
Until next time, Matthew, I guess.
Yes, arrivederci. I thought I'd try some Italian.
Cheerio.
Ciao.